There are news stories that arrive slowly, maturing within the narrative of college basketball. And there are those that bring the scent of a turnaround, almost like a blue and white alert pulsing in the heart of BBN. The anticipation of Bruce Branch III, the former #1 pick in the class of 2027, now repositioned for 2026, falls into the second category. It changes the game board, alters priorities, and reignites a theme that has accompanied the Mark Pope era from the beginning. Recruitment needs to be firm, fast, and surgical. There is interest from Kentucky, yes, and that's encouraging, but there's also the question that refuses to go away. Will Pope be aggressive enough this time? The class of 2026 doesn't yet have the weight that Rupp Arena hopes to carry on its shoulders. It doesn't lack potential, it lacks the stamp of approval. The favoritism over Tyron Stokes, the highest-ranked prospect in the country, is a spark that could ignite collective confidence. Christian Collins, a national top, 10-player, and arguably the power forward best suited to Pope's system, is also circulating on the radar with a proximity that's making waves. Two names, two high-caliber targets, two doors that could open with the dry sound of triumph. And then Branch III emerges, not as a distant promise, but as an immediate possibility. The kid from Gilbert, Arizona, is courted by virtually every relevant program in the country, including Kentucky, Louisville as well. And it won't be long before other giants show their interest. He doesn't yet have a declared favorite. He hasn't yet visited. He's still at the beginning of a cycle that could explode his ranking far beyond his current 8th place. When a talent of this magnitude reclassifies, the scenario changes from static to accelerated, and it's at this point that Pope needs to prove he's learned from past stumbles. Because if there's one recurring compliment to the coach, it's the way he manages to develop rookies within his system. Jasper Johnson, a 5-star from the class of 2025, was a solid success. Malachi Moreno, a 4-star player, came shortly after, reinforcing the idea that Pope knows how to scout talent, knows how to convince, knows how to sell his philosophy when he attacks with conviction. The question now is not whether Pope is capable, but whether he will be quick. Recruitment isn't a slow dance, it's a sprint. It's reading the moment. It's the instinct to close while the market is still breathing surprise. Branch 3 is talent for a modern system. Court length, athletic fluidity, versatility to play wide or penetrate, an offensive presence that could be a protagonist from the first month. Kentucky is in the fight. Asterisk, but interest without action becomes legend, not roster star. A prospect like that doesn't wait forever. With Arizona among the top 10 teams in the country and technically closer, nobody in Lexington can afford to blink. If Pope secures 2 names among Stokes, Collins, and Branch, 2026 ceases to be an expectation and becomes a photograph. If he gets Branch especially, it becomes a banner. But time is running out. Eyes are already on the outcome. And in a scenario where the elite move quickly, Kentucky needs to move even faster, like Pope did when he was under pressure, like he did when he couldn't afford to make a mistake. Bruce Branch III is at the table. The game has restarted. The debate surrounding Otega Oweh is a pertinent example of the tensions inherent in modern college basketball, where the line between individual ambitions and collective goals often becomes blurred. In Oweh's case, the player who returned for his final season at Kentucky with star status, chosen as the SEC Player of the Year in the preseason, now faces questions about his priorities. Is he playing to help Kentucky win the title, or is he more concerned with preserving his position in the next NBA draft? The answer is probably not simple, but the evidence accumulated so far suggests that his focus may be misaligned with what the team needs. The difference in Oweh's performance between last season and this one is striking. The previous year, he was a relentless force, a player who dominated the paint with his aggression and ability to seek physical contact. Now, he seems to have adopted a more safe playing style, avoiding direct confrontations and prioritizing long-range shots. This change not only reduces his individual effectiveness, but also compromises the team's collective functioning. The numbers speak for themselves. His free throw attempts have dropped drastically, from 5.3 per game to just 2.8. Meanwhile, his three-point attempts have increased, even with a mediocre 30% success rate. This suggests he is seeking to demonstrate offensive versatility, something NBA scouts value, instead of attacking his strengths. The problem is that this approach not only distances him from his identity as a player, but also weakens the physical impact Kentucky needs to compete against more robust teams. Oweh's statement during the preseason resonates as an unsettling reminder of this potential disconnect. Everything I need to do to get to the next level isn't going to hurt the team. It's only going to make it better, he said. Unfortunately, this statement hasn't materialized on the court. His focus on point guard skills, like three-point shooting, seems to be hindering precisely what makes him special: his ability to penetrate, finish, and dominate near the basket. On a team that demands physicality and presence in the paint, this transition to a more peripheral style is worrying. Furthermore, there are signs of a lack of intensity, something difficult to ignore in a veteran leader. Oweh has publicly admitted that he needs to push his hardest, a confession that, while honest, raises questions about his competitive mindset. Natural leaders don't need to be reminded to play with grit, they bring it naturally. And, at this moment, Oweh seems to be struggling with himself, torn between the desire to impress NBA scouts and the need to guide Kentucky toward success. This duality is understandable, but also dangerous. Oweh is at a critical crossroads in his career. He knows the upcoming draft could define his professional future, but he must also recognize that the best way to secure his position isn't by trying to mold his game to fit an idealized narrative created by NBA recruiters. It's by mastering the role he already knows how to play so well. The best college players are those who maximize their strengths, not those who try to compensate for potential weaknesses before they're even exposed. For Mark Pope, this is a delicate dilemma. As a coach, he needs to balance the individual ambitions of his players with the collective goals of the program. In Oweh's case, this means encouraging him to return to the roots of his game while working to integrate him more effectively into the team's tactical system. But at the same time, Pope can't force a player to change his mindset. That decision rests with Oweh. BBN hopes he finds that balance quickly. If Oweh continues to pursue a version of himself that doesn't reflect his true abilities, he risks jeopardizing both his draft chances and Kentucky's aspirations this season. On the other hand, if he returns to the aggressive and dominant style that made him a star, he could not only lead the team to the title, but also solidify his position as a top pick in the next draft. Ultimately, the question isn't whether Oweh is playing for Kentucky's title or for his draft position. The truth is, for him, these goals are not mutually exclusive. Mark Pope knows the weight of what he's building. He looks at his young, talented, explosive roster and sees potential. But he also knows that, in Kentucky, talent is just the starting point. What defines champions is something else: grit. Grit, the spirit that transcends statistics and minutes played. And last Wednesday, Pope had the perfect reminder of this before his athletes. The unforgettables, John Pelfrey, Richie Farmer, Darren Feldhouse, and Sean Woods, one of the most iconic groups to ever grace Lexington. When asked what he hopes the current Wildcats will absorb from that historic quartet, Pope was direct. If we can capture the essence, the spirit, and the commitment of those guys, we will be unbeatable. #Pope doesn't just want victory. He wants identity. The coach recalled grueling training sessions days bordering on physical torture, not out of cruelty, but out of the need to rebuild a program from scratch after the suspension that shook Kentucky in the early 90s. It wasn't just about basketball. It was about resilience. It's not just what they did, it's how they did it, Pope stated. The courage, the grit, and the suffering, they're the model of what Kentucky basketball should be. That word resonates at the right moment. The losses to Louisville and Michigan State have reignited doubts. The talent is there, the offense is running wild, but something deeper is missing, biting the game, competing through pain, reacting when the rhythm breaks. And that answer will need to appear quickly. North Carolina and, soon after, Gonzaga are tests that don't forgive weakness. Inspiration isn't the end. It's the beginning. By bringing the 2025 roster closer to eternally respected figures within the program, Pope attempts to activate an emotional connection, something numbers don't measure, but titles depend on. He wants his players to feel the jersey like the Unforgettables did. As he himself summarized, it's about commitment, about tireless and unwavering effort for growth. If this Kentucky team finds that spirit, even half of it, the SEC could become the stage for an unforgettable season of its own. But every historical comparison holds a silent question. Is the present willing to suffer as the past suffered to become legendary? The answer will come soon, one possession at a time. Share your opinion.